right, man. Well, hey, it's great to meet you. I appreciate you taking a minute out, Paul, and I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So let's begin our journey with 5 years ago. This pandemic happened, threw us all into the unknown. It undoubtedly changed things for all of us. How did you make it through that time period in a way that sent waves into the way you live today?
Yeah, great question. So preceding that time, I had spent many years working. I got a film degree back in college, and I've always wanted to make movies and do things like that. And just before the pandemic, I had decided to do some writing because that's a lot cheaper than making a movie because you can do it by yourself at 2 a.m. at the coffee shop. And so I put out a couple of little short stories and was sort of working my way towards a novel that I'd started, but um, wasn't really sure what to do with until I figured out, how to do the Facebook ads and, all that kind of stuff. I've been doing everything myself, so I was really kind of learning sort of that whole process. So when the pandemic starts, I'm actually visiting my parents at the time. They had been keeping my dogs, and I went to go pick up my dogs to come home. And I thought, well, things are getting a little crazy. Maybe I'll stay here another couple of days. Well, mom's got an appointment. I'll just stay next week. Anyway, I was there for 2.5 months. So luckily I had all my stuff with me on the trip. So we just stayed there and kind of made the best of it. And so I got called home to my home in Murfreesboro because one of my clients here, freelance clients, is a medical training place, and they were sort of on a freeze from doing training, and so they were taking that time to revamp all of their training materials. And so my buddy Noah, who's helped me on all of my film stuff, we did some training videos. It's not exactly, Grey's Anatomy or House or anything, but it's like a narrative style, scenario based stuff. It's not just like talking heads and pie charts and stuff like that. And it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun to do. It was good to feel like I was kind of almost back on set a little bit, lighting things and going over some performance stuff or whatever. So that's kind of fun. And the whole time, one of the ladies that we met doing that was Carrie Caredoff. And Carrie was just so naturalistic in her performance. And she also was like the right age and the right look for Gwen, which is the main character in my short story, The Darkness Rolled Over Her.
Yeah.
And as soon as I finished The Darkness Rolled Over Her, I thought, man, there's not but four characters in this. It's all exterior day. I've got a camera, I've got a microphone. Like, I think we could maybe do this, pretty cheaply. And so I'm watching Carrie during all this, and I don't say anything to her. But afterwards, I say to Noah, like, I think she might be good for Gwen if we ever make this into a movie. And the first real conversation that Noah and I ever had about really making it a movie was August 17th of 2020. So August 17th of 2020, he comes over to the house and I said, I really like to shoot this up in the East Tennessee mountains, but it's so remote. The budget that we would need to basically move everybody up there for a month or whatever to do it, I'm just not sure if I can raise it. But if we could find rivers around here that work, then we could shoot it evenings, weekends, get people to kind of volunteer, and we could just sort of piece it together over a few months or something. But we have a river here in Murfreesboro. It's called Stones River. And it's one of these, like in a lot of sort of suburban towns, it's got a greenway next to it. It runs behind the Dollar General and stuff like that. Not exactly where I wanted to shoot this movie, where they're supposed to be remotely out in the woods, up in the mountains. So we're not shooting in the Stones River. That's the one thing I can say for sure. So we found a place way down in Manchester that we thought we might like, and that set us on the path to saying, okay, maybe we can do this. So we started looking at cast, we started looking at crew. I went to a couple of guys that had seen my work over the years and had invested in some of my work over the years and asked if, they would put up a little bit of money so that we could get, nobody was paid, but could we get, a little bit of gear, some wardrobe and props, feed everybody, gas for vehicles we rented and things like that. And so we got a little money. And so our first day of production on this feature film was September 16th, 2020, less than a month later.
Yeah.
August 17th to September 16th. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never put a short film together that fast.
Yeah.
And so um, this whole story from the time I started writing it has sort of taken on a life of its own and become something way bigger than I expected it to. At first, it was just going to be an anecdote and then kind of a little parable. And then it became, once I started dealing with the subject matter, which it deals with the topic of suicide. And so once I got into that, I realized this was something more important that I was working on. Once the book was out, people would talk to me after having read it and would be telling me very personal things, and people that I was not in like really deep relationships with, but they just felt comfortable because they knew I would understand having read the book. And so that caused me to create the Five Coffees in a Book, which is like a little mini book club, allows people to discuss the themes,
Yeah.
in the book, trying to recreate that experience for other people. And so it just has sort of taken on this life and grown. And the film is another aspect of that. It just came together so quickly. And like I said, I thought that we would shoot it, maybe over some months. But Carrie is a pastor's wife and a nurse who makes her own schedule. And she's like, basically, I have to work minimum like 3, 4 days a month. After that, I can do my own schedule. She helped us find Phil, who plays Roy, who was perfect for the part. And they're a longtime friends. So we got to borrow on their friendship, in some of the scenes, which was nice. And he's retired and basically just does a lot of theater work for fun. So he was wide open, and most of the scenes are just the two of them. So we had a lot of freedom in our schedule. We shot 18 days over a month and a half, and principal photography was done.
Wow.
And at that point, I was able to go back to stay with my parents. Just if I'm going to be quarantined, if they're going to be quarantined, we might as well be together. And so I was able to edit the movie there and stay with them over Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that. And also, I got to take my parents up to the East Tennessee mountains to film some like second unit stuff. So I put the wardrobe on them. So in the movie, if you ever see a very long, far away shot of a beautiful river, that's probably my mom and dad down in the river.
Yeah.
But so we had a good time with that, and it's taken the post production has taken a very long time because I'm doing most of it myself. Noah's helping with a lot of pieces, but yeah, I'm just doing a lot of it myself, and trying to do other freelance stuff as well. And but I have learned so much doing this. I don't want to downplay the contributions of any of the people that helped us do it. We had a handful of people in our crew that at least worked a couple of days, which I really appreciate. We had a PA named Caitlin who was on set almost every day. She wasn't even supposed to be part of the crew. She came in as a sub on day one and said, "Can I come back?" And I said, "Well, I can't pay you. I can't even give you gas money, but I'll feed you if you're here." And she said, I understand. That's fine. She was there 16 out of the 18 days.
Yeah.
And we really depended on her. And least of all, I don't, or the biggest contribution of all was Noah. Noah was
Yeah.
there by my right hand every step of the way. And so I definitely don't want to downplay his contribution at all. But like I wrote this, I directed it, I produced it, I shot it, I edited it, I did the sound design. I'm doing the color correction. I'm helping with the visual effects. Noah's doing the big parts of those. But pretty much every major role on this thing I have done. I'm thankful to my film school education that prepared me to do that, taught us how to do everything a little bit. But some stuff I had to learn from scratch. And so, you know, uh, one of my favorite little quotes is from Leonardo da Vinci. He would keep these journals, and in one of his last journals in his old age, he just scribbled in the margin as almost just kind of an afterthought. I think the phrase is "ancora imparo," which means "and yet I am learning."
Yeah.
And here I am at 46, working on my first film still, and I'm still learning. I'm learning Logic from scratch. I never even opened Logic before, and now
Yeah.
I've done 5.1 surround sound mix for this whole film in it.
Yeah.
I've never used DaVinci Resolve before, and now I've got a full like color correction suite here in the house. And
Yeah.
so the film's almost done and almost out there and ready to help people. I'm excited to share it with people. But that's sort of been the journey with this particular thing so far. And and yet I'm learning.
So it's a deep story. What's your personal connection to the story? What sparked it?
Yeah, so it just began. My dad's a fly fisherman,
Yeah.
and he was a guide one day with some buddies on an experience kind of like is depicted in the book. Some like a veterans program that was doing fly fishing. And as I got to learn about it, fly fishing in particular is really great for people with PTSD because PTSD is this is the layman's explanation, of course, but essentially you're reliving that event over and over again. And so when you're in a traumatic event and you have heightened cortisol and heightened adrenaline, that's good because that helps you make quick decisions and get out of there and find a place of safety. But when you constantly relive it, you constantly have these high cortisol and these high adrenaline levels, and that's bad. That takes a real toll on your physical well-being, your mental well-being. And so just being out in nature, breathing fresh air, the white noise of the rushing water, being out in the sun, getting the sunlight and the vitamin D, just the rhythmic sort of ballet motion of the, casting the fly back and forth. It's very therapeutic for bringing those cortisol levels down, those adrenaline levels down, and allow some literal physical healing to take place. And most of these programs are engineered that then they sort of come back together and have like a sharing time or something like that, when they're back together. So as I got to learn about it, for me, it began really kind of as a parable, sort of. I had published my first my first short story, Kindling, and it had good reception. I didn't feel like it was economically feasible at the time to make a paperback of it, which a lot of people were asking for. So I thought I'll do a bunch of short stories and make a paperback of those. So I was just trying to collect short stories, and I thought about my dad going on this trip, and I thought about when he was teaching me fly fishing, that it was very different from the fly fishing I did as a little kid, where he'd give me a can of corn and a rod, basically to just keep me out of his way and just go sit on that rock over there for a couple hours. And you just sort of sit there and wait. But fly fishing is you're in the water and you're constantly moving upstream. And I thought, man, this is kind of a metaphor for the hardest times of my life. It's like you can't just sit down because then the water will just wash over you and you'll drown. So you gotta keep standing and you've got to keep moving against the current coming at you. And if you want to catch anything, if you want to thrive, not just survive, then you've got to keep moving upriver, which especially in East Tennessee means going uphill.
Yeah.
And so, here's my dad approaching 80, and he's slowed down a little bit, but he still goes up and fly fishes and crawls over these big rocks, and it's pretty impressive to watch. So it very quickly became, sort of a metaphor for this idea of needing to sort of keep moving no matter what's coming at you. And so I created a character who decided to stop moving. And one of the lines that's in the book is something that I've heard often throughout my life. This idea when an elderly person has a fall or has a serious illness, people will say, "Oh, once you stop moving, it's over." And so I kind of put those two ideas together, and I thought, here's this person who's decided to stop moving. And once it became about someone who wanted to take her own life, a lot of experiences like that I noticed were around me. And so I was uh, blessed enough to have friends around me that were willing to share about their personal experiences. I had a friend who lost her father to suicide. I have two friends that have attempted and lived and were able to share about sort of where they were at that time in their life. I was very grateful for that. I had a friend who was a counselor that had counseled people through those kind of times, and she gave me some really good um, uh, sort of counseling tips and sort of things that only that sort of education would know. And I tried to work all of their feedback into the book in some way, such that Gwen is very representative of someone who's in that space, and the important characters around her, I tried to have them model good ways and healthy ways of interacting with her. And so that's like I say, one reason why the book really took off. So it began with just sort of an anecdote, and it's consumed, my whole life for the last 5 years in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream life?
Oh, Jerry Seinfeld has this bit where he says, Superman, Batman, Ghostbuster, these were not movies or stories. These were career options when you
Yeah.
were five. And that was me, man. I was born in 1978. I remember one of the first films I remember seeing in 1983, so I would have been 5 years old, was seeing Yoda's big head at the
Yep.
Cinema 2 in Return of the Jedi. It was one of the first movies I saw in the theater. And so I've loved stories, especially movies. And I just grew up in this golden age of fun movies. And born when I am, I'm sort of on the cusp of, the Gen X and the millennial, and sort of don't really fit well in either, but have qualities of both.
Yeah.
And they call my generation the Goonies or
Yeah.
the Zennials, sort of that little crossover generation there. And yeah, so I've always wanted to do movies. I've done storytelling contests since I was five at the local library. And as I got older, I got really into music because that was something that was right in front of me that I could do. And I enjoyed doing a little bit of writing, a little bit of teaching. But at some point, 2 years into my music education degree in college, I realized it's just normal human beings that make movies. They're not
Yeah.
special. They're not from some other planet or something,
Yeah.
And a lot of them are huge nerds. I'm a huge nerd. I could probably do it.
Yeah.
And I just need to learn how. And so I went
Yeah.
to trade school at University of North Carolina School of the Arts. Got a fantastic education there, and that set me on my way.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been that inspirational force for your creativity in your life?
That was a fantastic question. Uh, it's interesting because I have not had many personal mentors, none that have followed me all through my life. I have had people that I'm very close to that I really respect and have learned a lot from, teachers mostly. My percussion teacher in middle school and high school is probably the closest thing to a mentor that I had at that time, which is one reason why I did music education for 2 years. I think it's
Yeah.
largely because of his influence. But growing up in a small town, there wasn't other people at that time doing what I was doing. I mean, I was editing with two VCRs, back in high school, and I was even in high school, I was just learning 3D. Jurassic Park had just come out, and I was learning 3D stuff on my old, PC at home that I'd built. And so there just wasn't. I couldn't go to the local filmmaker in town and learn from him, And so I had to learn from watching movies and trying to figure out what they're doing and mimicking them. I had to learn from DVD commentaries, and there's a lot of crazy things about the internet and social media and all that. But one of the beautiful things is um, I have access to some of the inner thoughts of some of the greatest living artists of our time, and I can go and I can read what they're thinking and how they're doing things. And not just the living artists. I can go and read biographies about Leonardo and Michelangelo and learn from them. And so I've sort of had to create, mentors that don't exist, people
Yeah.
that I want to emulate. I've been very grateful to have some good people in my life, but one filmmaker that I always thought I would kind of be like would be Robert Zemeckis,
Yeah.
because his stories are generally pretty grounded, even when they're fantastical. They're not super weird and experimental necessarily, but he's able to bring something really magical and fantastic to what is essentially, some humans trying to work out their stuff. And often there's an emotional quality to them. I tend to be more of an emotional storyteller than, a weird, visual gimmicky storyteller or something like that. The darkness rolled over her. I'm watching the final movie as it's coming together. I love it. I think it's great, especially for what it is and how much time and money we spent on it. It's not Citizen Kane,
Yeah.
but I think it's really going to touch people, and I think people are really going to be drawn in by it. And I'm really excited to see, what else I can do from here, assuming the world likes this and wants more.
So you had mentioned Robert Zemeckis. If you could meet one creative force on the planet right now that might help you on your path to ask some questions, see how they roll, who would that be?
It's a hard one to answer. Um, so let me answer it by saying why it's hard to answer.
Yeah.
Uh, Sort of even before I went to film school, but definitely in film school, I knew I don't want to go to Hollywood. I've grown up loving what Hollywood is giving me. But as I'm learning the business, I'm seeing what it takes to do that.
Yeah.
One of the first things we learn is every film wants to die, and it's going to die unless you keep it on life support, because no one else is going to care about it but you. And so you've got to fight really hard, and and part of that is deciding what you're going to fight hard against. So if you're making a studio picture and you're getting a bunch of notes, you have to decide which of these am I just going to find, make the car blue or whatever. Which of these am I going to fight? Which of these am I going to just sort of acquiesce? And I'm just looking at the worldview. I was developing my own worldview at the time as a person, as a human being, and looking at the worldview, not really of necessarily the movies that were being made, but sort of the business, the process of how one gets made. And I just thought, the things that I think I want to talk about, I don't really, I don't really want that industry telling me how to do it
Yeah.
or standing over my shoulder or putting boundaries around things. And I have seen other films and filmmakers sort of go through that process, and I don't envy them, you know. Even in just a broader sense, you know, I've seen more recently people who have grown to 1 million followers on Instagram on their own and immediately sign a record deal, and then like all of a sudden they almost disappear,
Yeah.
you know, because the studio's taken such a big cut of their work. And I'm just thinking, why would you just hand away? You already did the hard part.
Yeah.
You know, why would you just hand away? When I started writing my books, I got involved in an author group, and I was like, oh, these guys will tell me how to maybe get published or, you know, I didn't think I wanted to go with a publisher necessarily, but I was more open to that with my books because my books I was just sort of doing, I didn't care about it as much, basically. They weren't my
Yeah.
babies or whatever, you know, it was just kind of for fun. And one of the first things I found out was unless you're like John Grisham or something, like they don't do any marketing for you. They don't do
Yeah.
anything. You're still responsible for your own website. You're still responsible for your own PR. I met Josh Hood, who took over part of the Ludlum series. He started writing the Treadstone series, which is a spinoff of the you know, the Bourne books of the, you know, the Ludlum, arguably one of the biggest book franchises in history, you know, certainly recent history. And I was like, "Who's doing your PR?" He's like, "I am. I got to pay for it out of my own pocket. I'm running my own Instagram. I'm setting up my own appointments."
Yeah.
I was like, "That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane." And so I thought, if I got to do all that anyway, why would I give them $9 out of my book? You know? And
Yeah.
yeah, they might be able to put me on a bookshelf or something like that. That might help me get, you know, 100,000 readers instead of 1,000. You know? And yeah, I'd rather have, I guess, $1 out of 100,000 sales than $5 out of 1,000 sales, but I'd rather have $5 out of 100,000 sales, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather I'd rather do it myself, even if it takes longer. And so with my film, it was the same way, and it has been the same way. And um, in so I graduated film school in 2002. Like I said, I'd already been thinking this way and made this decision beforehand. But when I graduated film school, I stayed in Tennessee, you know, knowing that this is the path that I was choosing. Looking at it saying, it's going to take me a long time before I can direct my own film anyway. I'm not some big phenom people are going to be fighting over anything like that. So I'm going to have to work my way to it. And if I'm going to work my way to it and still be owned by a bunch of other people, I would rather do it another hard way where at
Yeah.
least by the time I get there, it's mine.
Yeah.
And in 2002, that was dumb. That was a dumb decision. Why would I make that decision in 2002? It was no, Facebook didn't exist. There was
Yeah.
no, I don't even, Google was around 2002, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, there was no iPhone. There was no, you know, the first hard drive that I bought, I paid like $1,200 for to be able to edit about 20 minutes of footage or something. Like the
Yeah.
cost of a cinema camera at that time, the really good ones you couldn't even buy. You had to rent from rental houses. And the new digital cameras that were coming out, some of the Sony cameras, I mean, they were hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So dumb. And look where we are now. It's the
Yeah.
best way to do it. It's the
Yeah.
best way to do it. So
100%.
I'm hoping that in the last 20 years that, you know, I'm not going to get totally passed up by all these these 20-year-olds that have just learned it this way in the first place.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm trying to, and that's why I'm doing, you know, talking to as many people as I can about what I'm doing, because I don't have millions of dollars for a marketing budget for this
Yeah.
stuff. I
Yep.
just need people to get excited about what I'm doing and hop on board and want to be a part of it.
So at the end of the day, Paul, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, readers, everyone that watches your films, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, wow. I didn't know this was going to be a therapy session. Uh,
This is the therapy question.
yeah, yeah. Um, my high school graduation speech, I shared a story from a Robert Fulghum book. I don't know if you remember Robert Fulghum. He
Yeah.
wrote the All I Really Need to Know, Learning Kindergarten book, and
Yeah.
some others. And one of those, he shares a story about um, how anytime somebody would say, "Are there any questions?" at the end of a thing, which was clearly meant to say, "Please don't ask any questions. We want to get out of here." You know, he would always raise his hand and say, "What's the meaning of life?" And everyone would laugh and then pack up their stuff and leave. You know. And then one time somebody said, "No, stop. I won't answer this question." And so everybody sat back down and was quiet. And it was a guy who was um, in Germany during World War II as a child. And at some point, he had found a piece of broken mirror from a German motorcycle. And he shaved the sides of it down until it was round so it wouldn't cut him, and he kept it in his pocket. And he said, no matter how dark things were, I would play this game where I would take the mirror and I would try to bounce light from the window or from the lamp or from the fire, wherever it was. I would try and bounce the light into the darkest corner that I could find. And he said, this is the meaning of my life. And I shared that at my graduation speech when I was in high school. It is, Parabolos is my production company. It's a Greek word which means gambling, reckless, dangerous. The para prefix means aside or alongside or to the side. The balo ending is where we get the word for ball or ballistic. It means I throw. And so the word literally means to throw aside. Uh, English cognate would be to throw caution to the wind, right?
Yeah.
And um, who am I? I'm trying daily to throw my life away to give light to whoever needs it.
Wow, that's deep. Final question. I want to end on a fun note. Let's say you walk into a room of everybody that's experienced you as a colleague or your writing or your work, and you walk up to a podium and you can tell them one fun thing about you, one fun story, something they may not realize about you. What would you tell them?
Goodness. Uh, a, a- um, a lot of what people get from us is our destination. People are going to read my book. They weren't there for the 9 months while I was hashing it out.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to watch the movie. They're not going to experience the last 5 years when I couldn't walk through my living room because all the gear and props and everything were, between the front door and the kitchen. Um, I was thinking earlier today about Norm Macdonald. I love Norm Macdonald. He's one of my favorite stand-ups. May he rest in peace. And he's the perfect example of this old Mark Twain essay called How to Tell a Story. And Mark Twain gives these examples of these jokes where one is just the joke and it's short and has a little punchline. And he says it's everybody listens and then you get a little crack right at the end. Okay. But someone who knows how to tell a story will meander and wind around and misspeak, and the telling of it is funny. By the time you get to the punchline, it doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah.
And Norm's perfect example of that is his moth story that he tells on Conan O'Brien. If you've ever seen that, it's worth
Yeah.
looking up. But I think what I would say is to a group of people there is so often you've gotten my destination, and I love the destinations that I've been to. But for me, it was the journey there that was the meaningful thing.
Yeah.
The film, the books, the projects that I've delivered, these are all fantastic souvenirs.
Yeah.
But you know, the experience was everything.
So The Darkness Rolled Over Her is the new book. It's the new film. If anyone wants to get involved with that or anything else that you've done prior, where's the best place to go to find out and delve in?
Absolutely. The Darkness Rolled Over Her ebook is available for free at fivecoffeesandabook.com. And you'll also find a free discussion guide there, which you can use to read the book and talk about it with friends. That's how I suggest reading it. It's fun and it will just really create a sense of relationships that you didn't even know was possible. So make friends for life. Go to fivecoffeesandabook.com, get the ebook for free, find the discussion guide there for free as well. Um, if at the very top there's a screenshot of the movie. If you click on that, you'll be able to watch the trailer if you want to see that. The movie will be out later this year. All of my other stuff is at parabolos.com, parabolos.com. And you can watch a couple of short films and find my books, audiobooks, podcasts, blog, everything else is over there. So when you get the ebook for free at fivecoffeesandabook.com, you will be put on our mailing list. And I don't hardly send anything out on that. You'll get a couple of automated emails sort of, right at first, but after that, I haven't sent anything out in months. I only email when there's something to say. So that's where you will be notified when the film is ready and where you can see that. So that's the way to get on our mailing list as well.
Okay, this has been wonderful. Paul, thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the release and everything else, man. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.